Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast. Today we are talking all about the NFL Combine. We're having a little break from Mock the Mock to talk about some of the college players and how they did at the Combine over the 4 days. Adam's here to join me to talk about it. I'm going to go through my knowledge of the players. He's going to talk about what he saw and his rises and fallers. But before we get into the players, Adam, how do you feel about the Combine? And do you think it's worth how hyped it is as an event and how much that people look at the players and evaluate the players from the Combine? Bear in mind, there's loads of tape out there of what they did all year.
First of all, how Rich Eisen and Daniel Jeremiah do it for the amount of time that they do is amazing, and actually make it come across as though it is sort of exciting. It's a weird event. I've always kind of been a little bit like, what's the point sort of thing. That's kind of how I feel about it. I mean, you get these certain things I think are worth looking at. So things like the 3-cone, I think that's a really interesting one for receivers. That tells you quite a lot about receivers and how quick they are to move and change direction. I think things like that's great. 40-yard dash, I mean, it's never going to happen, is it? So what are we doing here? Kind of thing. It's like at some point a defender's going to come and tackle you. Things like vertical jump. I mean, when is it? So a lot of this stuff, it feels very unlikely to happen in a game situation. So I think that's where it becomes a bit difficult to kind of get too excited about it. But yeah, I think I think for someone who doesn't watch a lot of college football, it's a good way to get to know all the players over the course of a weekend, and you can sort of go back and look at tape after that.
Yeah, I think that's always good for you. I think sometimes it's a bit misleading though, because you see some of these guys turn up that are pure athletes and they show up at the Combine and they look amazing. So you go like, oh yeah, he looked great. And then you go back and look at his tape and realize that,
are you thinking about one particular quarterback?
No, I wasn't necessarily talking about quarterbacks. There's a few people in there that showed up on the stats margin. I was a little bit like, they give away a lot of penalties at that position. That well, that playing, the fact that he can run faster than everybody else, great. But that's not going to stop him grabbing older people. But I've always been really, really excited for the Combine. I've really been buzzing for it. This year, I've watched it. I've watched all the highlights, and I was a bit underwhelmed this year. I felt like everybody did as I expected. And there was notably the television numbers dropped off. I think the XFL actually had a better viewing stats than the Combine, which is quite a shocking stat. And people like Bill Belichick didn't even attend the Combine this year, which I think is a massive sign that he doesn't value it anymore. And what's the point? So yeah, there's a couple of little things like that. I think they need to change it up a bit. I think the skill sets, rather than doing all the same things, I think you do stuff for quarterbacks, stuff for running backs, stuff for wide receivers, and really show off their skill set rather than a flat pan of these are the things that we do. But that is what it is.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that people are starting to veer away from it. Like, you get a lot more from game time, don't you? You see it from the games. That's what you want, because at the end of the day, that's what they're going to be doing. So that's why it's like it is, I suppose.
So let's jump right into the players. Adam, I'm going to go through it. I don't know how you've got your notes, but I'm going to go through it day by day and see if you've got any players that jumped out of you from those positions. So day one, obviously, was the linebackers, edge rushers, D-line. It's a lot of hype about this position for this year. Those people that are going to be going out there and putting pressure on the quarterback. How did you feel about day one, Adam?
Yeah, I think so. For me, I've kind of sort of categorized it a bit. D lineman, I'd start with the one who kind of just flew off the tape for me from what I saw, Adi Adebawar, defensive tackle from Northwestern. Giant of a man at 6'1", 282 pounds, ran 4.49. What the hell? Well, I mean, that is ridiculous for someone of that size to be doing that sort of thing. Yeah, I feel like he did really well. I think actually there was quite a few, wasn't there, sort of like edge rushers and defensive tackles that did pretty well. I think Luke Lucas Van Ness did pretty well. He looked like a pretty decent prospect. Obviously, smaller guy, but the one who kind of grabbed the headlines was Nolan Smith. You know, doing a 4.39 is pretty crazy for an edge rusher. And then finally, the only other one that I kind of like the look of was, and we've spoken about it. We spoke about him in the mock draft that we covered last week. Kalijah Kancey. I thought he had a decent weekend, and he looked pretty good. Not as quick as some of the others, but just was good all round sort of thing. And kind of there's a lot of hype about him being sort of like a potential top 10 prospect in the draft, and that might be the case. The only guy really that I think, you know, that was kind of like a big name that we sort of thought maybe it's not gone so well was Jalen Carter for everything that went on. But that was about it really. And yeah, I think they were the four that kind of really stood out to me.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I have got this just in case we needed it, so I might bring it up so you can have a little look. So if we do take a look at it, the guy that you were talking about, let's get on the defensive tackles first. Kalijah Kancey there's a lot of hype about him, a lot of talk about him. I think what's nice about him and the way people used his film from the combine is they compared him to Aaron Donald, obviously from the same college, similar height, similar pace. But what I like about that is they compared him to a player that plays at his position. So you can kind of gauge in your head, oh yeah, similar height, similar speed, you know, good player, same college. I like that. But when you talk about Nolan Smith and you talk about the fact of his pace, his tape that they showed you him, oh, look, he's quicker than Saquon Barkley or Stephon Diggs or, you know, Hopkins. And I was like, well, we're not going to be playing him at wide receiver. So thanks for showing me those highlights. Show me some highlights against the people that actually play his position. But notably, we were talking about, you hit the nail on the head. So Adam, you've obviously done some research quite well here because he tested out with the defensive ends, but he said defensive tackle. And there he is, Adebawore. He is taller. He is heavier. He's bigger than Kalijah Kancey, who everyone's going wild about. And he was so much quicker. It's so much quicker. So I'm not unsure of why people aren't looking at him. Also, just another little stat for you. He did his vertical and his broad jump. Both of them were better than Trayvon Walker's. So, you know, for a guy of his size, and everything like that, he's testing out really, really good. So I think he's definitely moving up the boards. I don't think he's moved himself maybe all the way up to talking about first round, but he might be back of the first round, early day 2 guy. So yeah, I think he's really, really good. Lucas Van Ness, I said to you prior to the combine starting, he was a guy I was really, really excited about seeing what he actually did at the combine. Really showed up, good display in all tests. And you talking about some of the drills you like for the wide receivers, but the 3-cone drill for the defensive ends, I think that's a really good one. Showing agility at that position, I think, is just incredible. And I think he really showed up at the 3-cone drill. I think we can probably have a look at him. There he is there, and it's just elite for me for that position to be coming off at that. So yeah, definitely. And Nolan Smith again, absolute beast. I think if I clicked through all of these stats, he'd be at the top of all of them, isn't he? When you look at his position, I think when you look at most of the scores, Nolan Smith top. It's him and Byron Young really. I think Byron Young really showed his athletic ability, obviously late to the game in American football, but Nolan Smith I think's definitely proved himself when we're talking about winners and losers. The likes of BJ Ojulari, who I think he only did one of the tests and did all right at it. And I think when you're talking about round 1 prospects and people trying to creep up into that first round pick, I think Nolan Smith's risen and BJ Ojulari sort of maybe drops down and you don't talk about him. You're going to have to go back to the tape and look at the two and compare them that way. So I think that's a really good rise for Nolan Smith and maybe a down for BJ Ojulari. Obviously, Miles Murphy, hamstring injury before the combine, so we missed him. Will Anderson only took part in the 40, and he put up a decent run. So I don't know whether that boosts him, whether, you mentioned it at the top there, Jalen Carter, obviously a lot of speculation going on outside of the combine for him. I think he did his measurements, but that's it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk of whether, I've seen a lot of mock drafts now where he's not even the first pick anymore. So Will Anderson.
Well, I don't think he will be, Willie, because of the quarterbacks. I mean, this is what it's going to be now. But I don't, to be honest, I can't see it really affecting him too badly. I think you're still looking at a top 5 pick. I just don't think that he's going to be at the top because of the quarterbacks.
If we take away the positions, just talking about first defender off of the board, I've now seen Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson being in before him. So I think he's sort of damaged his stock a little bit prior to it, not from anything he did at the combine. That's my defensive lineman. Again, I don't think there was anybody, I've said this before, I don't think there's anybody who really did horrendously bad. The only ones that sort of didn't impress me were people that are going to be sort of day 5, day 3 sort of picks. So you're not really talking about them. There's anybody you can get down there. But I think the defensive ends, pass rushers really showed up, really showed the talent. I think it's a really good depth of first-round players. I think you might see quite a lot of defensive linemen going very early and first round.
I think the one that kind of stood out was Adebawar, just purely because he's kind of the guy who isn't being talked about or wasn't being talked about anyway as a first round prospect, and you sort of look at him and you just sort of think, yeah, why not? I mean, he clearly has a lot of ability there. When it came to the linebacker safety sort of position, not really a lot I thought to get that excited about. I wasn't really that bothered. I thought Jack Campbell did pretty well. I thought he looked pretty good. I kind of felt like he should probably be not a first rounder, but certainly like maybe top 50 kind of guy. I think that's certainly something. The rest of it didn't really get too excited about any of them, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm the same with the linebackers. I thought Trenton Simpson's probably the only guy worth talking about. It's probably the only guy worth a potential first round pick. And he did well. So yeah, nothing too exciting at the linebacker. It was more those defensive linemen that really showed up. On to day 2, Adam. Day 2, we had the cornerbacks and the safeties. For me, I said it in the group when everyone was talking about the quarterbacks, I was really buzzing for these cornerbacks, and I thought all of them did really, really well. I don't think anybody did bad. I don't think anybody was a loser or dropped massively in this. And I thought people did rise up the board in this section. So really good show from the cornerbacks. I think there's going to be a lot of them going off the board early, day 1, day 2 as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at them and it was reaching a point where it's a little bit like I can't write all these names down because it's like, firstly, there's not enough paper, and secondly, it's like we haven't got enough time. So it's like, but I thought Deonte Banks was really good. I thought Cam Smith was really good. Joey Porter was really good. Loads of these guys out there that were really, really good. However, I felt there was one that was a cut above, and I just felt Christian Gonzalez was just outrageous at some of this stuff. He went 4.38. It wasn't the quickest, but it was still pretty quick. He was like very, very good in pretty much every drill that he did. He was really good. And the one thing that, and I'll talk about it again with the quarterbacks because I feel like it's the same sort of thing. The one thing that came across when he was doing the drills, just how smooth he was when he did everything. That's the word for him, and it's the word for some of the quarterbacks as well. But Gonzalez is just something else. I think I don't think he's Sauce Gardner. I don't, but I think he's not far off, and he's a really, really good cornerback, which I think anyone's going to be really, really lucky to get him first round, probably I don't know. It's difficult because, you know, it's position and all that. So like quarterbacks go up high. You're going to have some of these edge rushers. I don't know if he'll be a top 10 pick, but I think he probably should be.
Yeah, I fully agree. He was the guy for me. He was the guy for me prior to the combine when everyone was talking about who's your cornerback one. Christian Gonzalez for me. He's got, you know, what I really like about him is he's got the height and he's got the ability. He's got the tape. And for me, that means a lot. That extra bit of height that he's got on some of these other guys. Some of them are coming under 6 foot. I think that's a bit of a worry. You know, his vertical is good, his speed was good, his tape is good. I think, yeah, smooth, great. I think he should be cornerback one. Obviously, Witherspoon didn't do any drills. He just did interviews. He says he's going to leave it all down to the pro day. I think his pro day is soon. I think might even be tomorrow. I think for those guys. So obviously you got the pro days coming up. So I think he's going to test out there. So I'm going to have to wait to see what he does. But for me, Gonzalez, for me, is cornerback one. So it was, what are you talking? Gonzalez, Witherspoon, Joey Porter are like the top 3 names everyone's talking about. That's where all the buzz is. And I think Joey Porter equally had a good combine, had a really good combine. Then people after that, I thought, again, like you've just said, Cam Smith, I thought he rose his stock. There was a lot of people talking about him after the college season had finished. Then when everyone started talking about drafts, I saw his name sort of dropping down, and I saw people like Emmanuel Forbes and Deonte Banks and people like that coming in above Cam Smith. For me, I'm higher on Cam Smith over those two. You said I was talking about one of the quarterbacks when I was talking about this, but Banks right there showed up, absolute athlete, you know, great vertical, great 40, great speed. At college, I felt he was a bit handsy, and I felt he gave away a lot of penalties. So, you know, you can show up at the combine and do great, but go back and look at the tape. Also, his teammate. When we're talking about risers and fallers, I know a lot of people watching this will probably want to know who they're going to get in the first round and the second round and who those exciting picks are. But we talk about his teammate, Jacquarion Bennett, also had a great combine. But he's one of those guys, when you talk about risers, he's probably one of the biggest risers. He's going to rise from sort of round 5, probably up to round 3 from his combine. So I think that's a big rise for him. So, yeah, really, really good. Forbes, I know I've just mentioned him there. You'll see him on there, Emmanuel Forbes. He had a good combine. There's a lot of people put him in, but I don't know if you saw outside of the drills, he came in really, really light.
Right. A lot of players didn't they?
Yeah, a lot of them coming slightly. Well, I think a lot of them are shredding weight and losing like 10, 15 pounds coming into the combine because they've been practicing for drills of like running. So they've been running. So I think he might have to go back and have a look at what his weight was for game time when he was at college, but coming a little light for that position. I think he might get beat around in the NFL a little bit, but equally had quite a nice combine. So yeah, again, like I said, all of the positions there, a lot of cornerbacks. Don't think there was anything outstanding from the safeties. I think we talk about. Go on.
No, the only thing really that I kind of I was surprised Brian Branch I thought was a bit slow. I have to say I kind of thought he would be a bit quicker than what he was. You know, he's the one that we had kind of all, you know, there was a lot of talk about him being a you know, first round pick and being quite a high first round pick as well. So that, you know, that was the one that you kind of felt was maybe a little bit slow. I don't know if it was just because he was sort of like being thrown in with a lot of these corners as well on the same day, so maybe that's why it felt like it. But yeah, I think really apart from that, there wasn't really anything with the safeties that was too interesting.
So we're in a 4-5-8.
Yeah, I mean, it's not awful. It's just not, you know, when you've got a load of corners going 4-3 and stuff like that. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, I think pace would be fine. He's not going to be one of those guys. I don't think that's going to be one-to-one marking on the wide out. I don't think he's going to be used in that kind of position. So I'm not overly fussed about his sort of straight line speed for that. So I think he'll fit in nicely with, again, go back to the tape and have a look at him. He's I think he's still round one. I think he did well. Day 3, Adam, probably the day that everybody is excited about, probably the one that everyone put on the TV. It was the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, and the tight ends. Obviously, you probably want to talk about the freak show that turned up to the combine in this section. But Adam, how did you feel about day 3?
I mean, the quarterbacks. It was I watched some of it, and it's interesting the way that they sort of put the group together almost. And Will Levis was out there with a lot of what I will call the other guys, should we say, who aren't really the sort of first round picks. And to be honest, I wasn't that thrilled by him. I kind of felt like he was pretty much with the other guys, like your sort of your Stetson Bennett's and stuff like that. And he's clearly got a very strong arm. And when you kind of like, you send the wide receiver to run like 60 yards or whatever, he can do that. And so that's where he's a little bit different. But I didn't really feel like he popped or anything like that. And you kind of like going, oh, he's all right. He's a little bit better than the rest of these guys. And then you had Anthony Richardson and you had CJ Stroud come out afterwards. And as soon as they both came out, you just went, oh, okay, he's not like anything special at all. So Levis was a bit of a down one for me. Richardson, obviously, is just mental, isn't it? I mean, it is just insane. And I think we kind of all knew he was going to do well at this sort of thing just because of the type of athlete that he is. But obviously, the one thing that kind of gets missed, and you watch it, and some of his throws were not great. Some of them were off. They were off by quite a way, and some of them were not brilliant, which I know isn't his strength, but as a quarterback, that is slightly concerning. But you cannot deny just the sheer physical sort of power that you see when he's on, doing these drills and stuff like that. And the way that the NFL's going, you just can't help but feel that he is going to be a massive pick. He will be. I said he's definitely top 10 as soon as that was done. I think he's probably 3. I think someone will gamble in the same way they did with Trey Lance, and I think he'll be the third pick off the board. And he broke every record, so you can see why. So I think because of that, that's understandable. And then CJ Stroud, I just think, again, as I said with Christian Gonzalez, it was just so effortless, so smooth, so easy to see. Will obviously translate into the NFL, and it's difficult. You can't really compare him with Bryce Young because obviously Bryce Young wasn't there. But from what I saw, it's, you wouldn't be upset if he was your quarterback.
Yeah, you definitely not. I mean, he put on a throwing masterclass. For me, I would use the word masterclass in the throwing drills. I just thought he was absolutely spectacular. I think people are saying they're not hot on him because they said he wasn't good under pressure. But I think when you look at his college tape and you see that the teams he played, he wasn't under pressure a hell of a lot. When he went up against the best team in college football in Georgia, and they put a hell of a lot of pressure on him, he managed to step up and put the critics quiet and silence them all with the way he played. And at the combine, he showed up and showed how good of a masterclass he is at throwing the ball. Anthony Richardson, what an absolute freak of nature. We knew he was going to turn up as a pure athlete, but to go out there and do what he did, you've got to take your hat off and say, yeah, you are good. I thought he threw the ball quite well. Wasn't disappointed with how he threw. Like you said, it's not his strong point. So I can definitely see why someone's going to take a gamble on him. And if you've got someone that you can already play, then definitely worth taking a gamble on him. And again, you've hit the nail on the head. I've been as critical as Will Levis as you. I thought he did fine. Fine was the word I was using for Will Levis. I think no one dropped in value. I don't think anybody did anything to go, oh no, I'm not sure about that. He's gonna be a faller rather than a riser. I think there was only risers for me here. And I thought the likes of Max Duggan and Stetson Bennett both rose for me. I thought Stetson Bennett especially, I think he showed the talents at the combine and what he did at Georgia to be a late round pick in the draft. And for someone to take a gamble on, I mean, I've been doing it a couple of times. I wasn't sure what was going to go on with Dan Jones. I thought, you know, if you can get Stetson Bennett at sort of the 6th round or 7th round, if he's there, then he's well worth that pick, isn't he? You know, a lot of people talk about Brock Purdy and compared him to Brock Purdy prior to this. Maybe he could be. Definitely, I thought he showed up and did well at the combine. You look like you disagreed with me that there was no fallers.
I think I feel that Levis fell just purely because Richardson rose. I think is probably more what it is, and that's just kind of where I think Levis was very much touted as the sort of the number 3 who could potentially be a number 2. I think before this, that was kind of the way that people were talking. It was almost like him and CJ Stroud were quite equal. Whereas for now, I feel like I say, I saw him and I just kind of felt like, yeah, no, he did all right. And like you say, fine is probably a good word for what the performance was. And when he was up against, you know, with them other guys, he was all right. But like I say, you then bring on Richardson and Stroud, and it's obvious that these two are better. Now, maybe that's just they're better at being tested. You know, this is the thing. It's like it might not necessarily be that, you know, Levis in a game situation might be different. But from what you see, purely from the combine, they kind of felt like, yeah, these two are cut above. And I think that was why he probably fell a little bit, because they, you know, everyone had him as the sort of number 3 guy.
Yeah, I think there's arguable comparisons for him to say that he could still be the number 3, but yeah, it is what it is with them. I think, like I said, for me, I think Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are the plug in and play outstanding people, and then it's Anthony Richardson and Levis of who you want to take and turn into a superstar. Really, I think that's where we're at with them. The wide receivers, I'm hoping you're going to say the name I want you to. So surely he was your outstanding performer of this.
Unfortunately, I think I probably am, but I'm going to make you wait for it for a little bit. I liked Marvin Mims. I thought he looked pretty good. I thought he had a decent. He did a 4.38. I thought Mims was good. Quinton Johnson, I thought was good, given the fact that he's just different to everybody else that's in this class. It's like they're all very small receivers, and Quinton Johnson, you know, over 200 pounds, 6'4". Just kind of stood out because of that, and I think he did pretty well. Now there's 2 guys that you are probably going to want me to say, and unfortunately I probably am. I thought Rashee Rice was good. I thought he looked really good. Was had a decent weekend. And then there was one guy who kind of just looked again. It's the same word, it's smooth, and just looked a cut above, and that was Jackson Smith-Njigba, who his 3-cone was ridiculous. His 20-yard shuttle was ridiculous. Just the change of direction that he has is so impressive, so quick that he can do it. Really, really reminded me of the sort of things that you would see Edelman do. That was kind of what he reminded me of when I saw it. Just, yeah, think that he's really good. And I have to say, based on where their picks are in the draft, given the fact they got the number 2 pick and I think the Texans have got the number 12, is it, as well? I think they would be mental if they didn't go Stroud and Jackson Smith and Jigba and do what the Bengals did with Burrow and Chase.
Yeah, I think what's nice about that as well is you saw those two at the combine together, geeing each other up. They went and watched each other when they were performing, and they were hyping each other. So if you can get those two, the combination is going to be fantastic. Obviously, people were worried about Jackson Smith and Jigga because of his injury last year, and saying like, oh, he's not come back the same player that he was in 2021, where he outperformed Olave and Wilson. But to come out and do the 3-cone and the short shuttle and like absolutely blow it, I like so much better than everybody else. Not just like, oh, he was number one. He beat everybody by a long way. So I think you can take a look at his 3-cone.
I really like. I think probably the number one wide receiver to go. Yeah, I think he should be.
I think he really proved himself to be that. Obviously, I think he's going to be, I said this on the Mock, he's going to predominantly be, I think, a slot receiver. You said he reminds you of an Edelman. He reminds me sort of maybe of a Cooper Kupp, maybe.
But Kupp was very strong in the slot, wasn't he? But I also think he has the ability to go on the outside as well. I think he would be able to do that. So it's like,
I think he's definitely got the ability to. And you're right, like I say with the Houston. Who else? I thought that we were talking about losers and winners and losers. I thought Jordan Addison. He was carrying an injury, unfortunately, into the combine, but still participated in everything. And I think he didn't do himself any favors. A guy that I've heavily talked about how good he is and how much I liked him and how much I'd like to see him at the Giants. So I think he can a bit of redemption on his pro day. I think that could help him. I also think that Kayshon Boutte from LSU, massively hyped him going in his college career, and then he had his fallout after game one. Then he wanted a transfer, then they managed to sort it out, and he stayed, and then he just didn't live up to his first year stats. And then he was, for me, just okay at the combine. I think he really needed to come out and show that he'd still got that talent. He'd still got that explosiveness. If he'd come out and done 3 cones and short shuttles like Jackson Smith and Jigba, we're going, Boutte might be back here. He might be up to what his level, but after his injury, that explosiveness seems to have disappeared a bit. But I think anybody who takes him is going to get a quality player, and he might be a bit of a steal because I think he's going to fall in this. Also, talking about the combine again, players, the expectation and things like that, and people going like, no, well, you've not just looked at the tape. I felt like Jalen Hyatt, I think people wanted him to be super quicker than he was. And when we look at his time, I think he did a 4:40. Let's just take a look. And everyone was like, oh no, he needs to be sub 4:4. There he is, sub 4:4. 4:40 is quick. Come on, what are we saying here? That it wasn't as quick as what we wanted it to be. He was the quickest for me. If you look at the list, the quickest of me of all the big names. So
I think they just. I suppose the expectation is that you get quicker and faster and just everything, isn't it? It just gets better and better, sort of thing. And I think that there has to be a limit, really, because it's like these people just can't do it. So yeah, I mean 4:4 is not a bad time. It's just not 4:3. That's the only thing that it's gonna, that's it. It's mean, and this is what I mean a little bit with the 40-yard dash and stuff like that. In reality, how many times is a wide receiver gonna get in them situations? Now, they do. It's not that they don't. And if anything, you'd think wide receivers doing this is probably more likely to be a beneficial test. Because you get your Tyreek Hills and stuff like that can do it, but it's not going to happen all the time. And it's just what it is. I mean, yeah, he's done 4:4 against the top was like 4:36. It's like, Oh well.
Yeah, but there
4-3-3. You know. So I mean,
Davis. I think Davis is tiny, isn't he? He's super small. I think
yeah.
the Lowe's are slot guys anyway.
Yeah.
You know, Wheaton, Mims. They're none of the guys that people are talking about being round one potential picks or early round two picks, whereas Hyatt is, and he's the quickest of them. Zay Flowers, thought he had a nice combine. Thought he was really good. One of the shorter guys again that you mentioned. There's only Quentin Johnson. There's a big guy, isn't there? I mean, Rashie Rice is over 6 foot, but he came in shorter than what I thought he was going to come in. I thought he was like well over 6 foot. He was 6 foot and so many. So a little bit shorter than I thought he was, but still had a nice combine. But a position now that maybe you're a bit more excited about, maybe you put a bit more effort in, because lots of people are touting you to take the Green Bay Packers to take a tight end. How did you feel the tight ends went? There's a lot of hype that this is quite a strong tight end class.
Yeah, it feels like it is quite a strong tight end class this year. Obviously the one that everyone is kind of been talking about is Michael Mayer, and it's difficult because I didn't really think that he did anything particularly impressive. I thought he was good and he was pretty, good all round, but I didn't think anything was massively impressive. But obviously you don't see blocking or anything like that in this. And when it comes to tight ends, that's what they do. And that's kind of what Mayer does a lot. He is a strong blocker, and then it's sort of, try after that, isn't it? The catch after the block sort of thing. So I didn't think he was particularly great. He didn't come across as though he was particularly big. He was decent though. So the one that I have to say I thought looked really good. I haven't seen any tape on him at all, so I don't know if this might just purely be, combine and stuff like that. Sam Laporta, I thought he was the one who looked decent. I thought he did well. Ran a 4.59. 6'4", but pretty similar sort of numbers, to be honest, to Mayer. But he just looked quite smooth when he was doing the catching drills and stuff like that. And I just think that Laporta did pretty well. A lot of people kind of got all excited about Darnell Washington because of his one-hand catch and stuff like that. And obviously he's like 6'7", 264 pounds and all that. So, and I think he ran a 4.6 as well, which is like pretty mental. But I think Laporta was the one who kind of stood out the most to me. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there. I mean, Musgrave had a decent day, sort of thing. I think, is it Shonamaker? I think he did okay, sort of thing. There's some guys this year that look capable.
Yeah, we reviewed the rookies from last year and said how good the rookies had been last year, actually in the NFL, and said how good they were. And there's a lot of hype about these guys. And I'm so glad, Adam, that when you talk about Michael Mayer, that you weren't on the hype train, that he was a faller for this. Lots of people have got him as a massive faller because he didn't show up particularly amazing in any of the drills. He was just in the drills, but he's a tight end. Like you say, he's a tight end. He could be Washington or Kuntz, but who just, both 6'7", both showed up, both had good scores. But for me, Michael Mayer, the tape, again, go to the tape, watch him. He was fantastic. You say he wasn't that big. Yeah, I thought when he plays, he looks bigger and he looks like he gets a lot of separation and uses his arms well. But apparently hasn't got a big wingspan and wasn't all that big. But when he plays and you watch him, he looks like he is. So I think that's got to be worth more than not being an Anthony Richardson at the combine, essentially.
I just don't think he'll test well. That's the thing. I think that the things that they were doing doesn't necessarily suit his game. And I think that's the reason that it wasn't quite as fantastic as what a lot of people hoped. He doesn't, like I say, I haven't seen loads of tape on him, but the bits that I have seen of him, he seems like he is very much block first, and then it's kind of, yards after the catch and all that kind of thing when it comes to him, rather than, any sort of like. I think it depends what you want. It depends what your team need is. I suppose really, it's like, yeah. The one thing I would say, it is a good class. None of these are Travis Kelce. Don't think that any of them are Travis Kelce, because they're not going to be. But I do think you've got some guys here that could do pretty well. And like you say, last year when we did the review, we did a fantasy review, didn't we, of the tight ends and stuff like that. And you sort of like, you go through them, you sort of think, actually, there's some decent guys here that could do something. So I think there's going to be, give it a year or two, there's going to be a whole new load of tight ends in the league.
Yeah, I know you were talking about drills that people might not do. Darnell Washington didn't do the 3-cone drill, and he didn't do it because he hasn't got great movement.
No,
that's not his skill set. He turned up and did the things that fitted well for him for his skill set.
Exactly.
Clever thinking. Mayer for me, again, I'm just going to close off on him. He was for me the best chain mover of this draft. You know, if you watch his tape, he's going to move the chains for you. I think that's worth quite a lot when you're talking about position. Dalton Kincaid didn't do any tests, and apparently he's moved above him in the rankings for tight ends, and people are putting him in as the number 1 tight end off the board, and he didn't do anything. So we're going to have to wait for his pro day. If he turns up at his pro day and is exceptional, then maybe Kincaid might be the number 1 tight end. Maybe he will prove me wrong, and it won't be Mayer, but I'm going to stick with Mayer for the time being. And then, Adam, on to the last day, day 4. We had the running backs and the O-line. O-line's become a bit more of an exciting position to watch, and it definitely is at the combine. Everyone enjoys the big guys performing other than just standing up and pushing people. So, Adam, day 4, how did it go for you?
Yeah, I felt we go with the O-line first. I kind of felt like Skoronski is the clear number 1 when it comes to the O-line. I just think he just looks strong. He looks decent. He ran a 5.18, which, you know, sounds slow, but he's 313 pounds. So, you know, he's not a small guy. So 5.18, I think he did really well, and I think he just kind of cemented his place as probably the number 1 O-line guy in this draft. I'll be surprised if he doesn't. It's difficult because you keep saying top 10, and it's like they can't all be top 10. But I think he's a definite first rounder. I thought Blake Freeland actually did pretty well. I quite like the look of him. 6'8", but he seemed quite small, like compared to the other guys, is what I noticed. But he went under 5 seconds in the 40, broke the record for the vertical jump for an O-lineman. I thought he did really well. You know, Paris Johnson and Broderick Jones, they're kind of both first round picks from what people are saying. I thought they both did pretty well and looked decent. The one guy who I thought was a little bit didn't do great, Osiris Torrance, just didn't really come across great. He's a bit heavier than all the others, which isn't a bad thing for an O-lineman, but just didn't really perform amazingly. And again, it might just be that his tape is better and he's better in game time than he is when it comes to being tested like that. But I think for me, Skoronski, I think should be the number 1.
Yeah, again, I think I've said when we've been talking about it, it was coin flip between Skoronski and Paris for me. But I think Skoronski, you can't go wrong with either of them. And I said Skoronski, whichever team he goes to, he's going to be great. Can play either tackle or guard. So, you know, he's going to be good for you. I think Broderick Jones really showed up. I thought he was fantastic. I also think Anton Harrison, who I've got as a first rounder, and I've got him on all my mock drafts, and I'm not seeing him on many mock drafts. So I think he had a great combine. I think he's got great tape. I think he's round 1 worthy. Blake Freeland, had an absolutely fantastic combine, but had a bit of a stinker at the Senior Bowl.
A lot of people were saying about that. Yeah.
So it's which one do you think? But I was quite disappointed with the Senior Bowl in totality, really. But he could be a nice guy. again, there's no surprises here for me. There was no shocks. Everybody did well. Everyone did all right. There's no, as I said this about the whole of the combine. I felt like it went to script and everybody did all right. There was one player when I'm looking through a lot of them, his name keeps cropping up. I didn't see a lot of anything of him during his college career. John Gaines. John Gaines, there you go. You've got him at the split. He was top 3. I think at the 3-cone. Was it 3-cone in the shuttle? I think he was really good at as well. Yeah, number 1 at his position. And number 1 again. So I didn't see a lot of him, and he went to UCLA, which is a massive college, big team, good team, showed up. So I might have to go back and take a look at some tape on John Gaines, because he's really showed up here and he goes to a big school, and I don't know enough about him. But I think from this, I think there's going to be a lot of people that do the same thing. I think there's going to be a lot of people who go, hang on, this guy's. So you might see him rising up a few boards if the tape's there and he does look good. I think he's done himself an absolute, at the guard position. I think he's done absolutely fantastic at the combine, and one of my biggest risers of the whole of it. Another name that's not common in everybody's household. Adam, the running backs, was there anything there for you? Was it just Bijan Robinson, or have you got some sneaky ones in there?
I thought there was quite a few guys in this class that looked pretty good. As we know, with the 40-yard and stuff like that, it kind of, that's their thing, isn't it? With the running backs, it's, I thought Chase Brown looked pretty good. He did, I think he had a 4.3 something. He looked decent. One who actually was a bit slower, but I still think he looked pretty good. He did a bit better than what I thought he might. Zach Charbonnet, I thought he did a little bit better than what I thought he would. Deneric Prince is another one who is a little bit not quite as quick. He did a 4.4, but in the sort of drills that he did, he seemed like almost violent with the way that he was running through things, and you just know there's someone's going to want that. Someone's going to pick him up and stuff like that. So I thought he was really good. Jahmyr Gibbs obviously looked very sort of like very fleet of foot and very quick. I thought he did really well. Tajay Spears is another one who I thought had a good combine. Kind of a little bit Bijan light, I would probably say, actually. He kind of reminded me of that. And then there was Bijan Robinson himself, who, despite, you had all these guys and they all looked pretty good and they all looked pretty solid, and then Bijan turned up and you just sort of went, oh, wow, okay, this guy really smooth. Nothing like mental when you look at the numbers or anything like that, just very smooth, very good, great technique. I think he's going to be. I mean, like I say, haven't watched loads of his tape, but I do think you can just see that he's probably the best guy to come out of college since, I don't know. Well, yeah, I mean, you've got Saquon. I think he might be better than that. I think you might be looking Adrian Peterson type. Really, really good. And you can't say enough about him. And I think you've got, wherever he goes, they've got themselves a player for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's a name that everyone's always, you hear the word Saquon Barkley a lot when they talk about Bijan Robinson. And I agree with you. I think he's got a lot of upside and a lot of talent that maybe he could be better than him. So I'm really excited about him. Was buzzing about him during his college time. And again, Chase Brown, he mentioned it. I thought he really showed up. His twin brother was at the combine as well. Both play for Illinois. I think it's Sidney Brown. I think they both had good combines. And Tajay Spears is one of the guys that everyone's hyping about how good he was at the Senior Bowl prior to the game. Everyone was like saying how well he was testing all the lead up. So he's done himself a justice there and showed up as well. But I don't think there's anything overly exciting. I think that Kenny McIntosh from Georgia, a lot of people had a lot of good stuff to say about him, and I think he really didn't really show up at the combine. I think he might have lost a bit of stock value there. But I think, again, it's another position that sort of went as we thought, and nothing overly surprising. But yeah, we'll look forward to the pro days after this, Adam, and we'll be dissecting it all again, and there'll be more mock the mocks. I'm sure they're all going to change now. I might have to go back and look at whether I had some people in the wrong spot or not. But that's all we've got time for today, Adam. Hopefully you're going to go away and take a look at some of the people, go and watch a bit more tape, go and have a look at John Gaines, see if he's up there for you. But till next time, thanks for joining and goodbye.